The first time I realized my marriage was over, I was standing in uniform at a formal dining table, being thanked for my service by people who had already decided I didn't matter. My husband raised his glass. My sister smiled, too wide. And I understood something before anyone said it out loud. If this hits close to home, stay with me. Like the video, subscribe, leave a comment. Not because this story is dramatic, but because silence like this survives when no one names it. My name is Captain Rachel Donovan, United States Army. I was 32 years old at the time, an intelligence logistics officer assigned to Fort Carson, Colorado. 12 years of service, 2 overseas deployments, a commendation medal folded inside a drawer I rarely opened. I was the reliable one, the one who came home on leave and fixed things, the one who didn't complain when plans changed or people forgot. And that night, at my parents' house in Des Moines, Iowa, I was the one being quietly erased. The occasion was supposed to be simple. A family dinner to celebrate my sister's promotion. My older sister, Emily Donovan, had just been named regional director at a mid-sized real estate firm. Everyone clapped when my father announced it. My mother cried. My husband leaned over and whispered, "She deserves this." I nodded. Emily always deserved things. I learned that early. She was 2 years older, louder, prettier in a way people noticed. I was the other one, the disciplined one, the one who left town at 18 and joined the Army without asking for approval. My husband, Michael Grant, sat beside me, his hand resting on my knee like a prop. We'd been married 5 years, long distance for most of it. I deployed, he stayed behind. We told people that made us strong. We were wrong. Dinner moved on, stories were told, wine glasses refilled. Then my mother turned to me. "And Rachel," she said, voice light, "when are you finally leaving the Army? You've done your part." The table laughed softly. I smiled, because that's what I'd been trained to do. "I'm up for major next cycle," I said. "I just extended my contract." The smile on my mother's face stiffened. My father cleared his throat. Michael didn't look at me. Emily did. She tilted her head and said, "But you're gone all the time. It's not fair to Michael." The word fair landed wrong. "I serve my country," I said evenly. "Yes, but at what cost?" my mother replied. "Family matters too." Michael squeezed my knee, harder this time. A warning disguised as affection. "Rachel knows," he said. "We've talked about it." We hadn't. That was the first small betrayal. The kind people dismiss because it's polite. Later that night, after dessert, my father handed Emily an envelope. "This was your grandmother's," he said. "She wanted you to have it." Emily opened it. Inside was a handwritten note and a cashier's check. $50,000 for a house down payment. Everyone watched her reaction. No one looked at me. My grandmother, Margaret Donovan, had helped raise us. She told me more than once that I reminded her of herself. Quiet, capable, unmoved by applause. She died 6 months earlier. No one had mentioned money until now. I waited. Nothing came. I didn't ask. Soldiers are trained to observe before reacting. But something inside me recalibrated. That night, in the guest bedroom Michael and I were given, I lay awake, listening to him breathe. I said his name. "Michael." "Yeah? Did you know about the money?" He didn't answer right away. Then Emily mentioned something. "When?" "A while ago." I turned to face him. "Why didn't you tell me?" He sighed. "I didn't want to upset you." That was his favorite phrase. He used it whenever he made a decision without me. I stared at the ceiling. "Did you know it was only for her?" He shifted. "Your parents thought it made sense." "They thought," I repeated. "Or you agreed." Silence. That was the second betrayal. Larger, heavier. The next morning, I woke early and went for a run. 5 miles through a neighborhood I no longer belonged to. I needed the rhythm, the burn. When I came back, Emily was in the kitchen, wearing Michael's hoodie. That wasn't strange. Families share clothes, except it was my hoodie. The one I left behind during my last deployment. She smiled when she saw me. "Oh, morning." "Morning," I said. Michael's coffee mug was on the counter. 2 used cups. I didn't ask questions. I didn't accuse. I logged the detail and moved on. At brunch, my mother mentioned that Michael had been helping Emily a lot while I was away. Helping her move, helping her network, helping her feel supported. I watched the way Emily avoided my eyes. That afternoon, I got a call from my commanding officer, Colonel Thomas Reed, reminding me that my next evaluation packet was due in 2 weeks. Promotion boards were unforgiving. I stepped outside to take it. When I came back in, my parents and sister were talking in low voices. They stopped when they saw me. Michael stood too quickly. "What's going on?" I asked. Emily laughed. "Nothing. We were just talking about Thanksgiving plans." My father nodded. "You probably won't make it anyway." The words were casual, dismissive, final. Something in my chest went cold. That evening, as we packed to leave, Michael took a call outside. I watched from the window. He was smiling. The private kind. When he came back, I said, "Who is that?" He hesitated. "Emily." "For what?" "She wanted to check in." I nodded. Then I said something I'd never said before. "I want the truth." His face changed, just a fraction. And in that moment, standing in my childhood home, with my uniform folded neatly in a suitcase, I understood that whatever was happening had already been happening for a long time. I just hadn't been looking directly at it. Not yet, but I would. Because soldiers don't survive by pretending threats aren't real. And this one was already inside the wire. The truth rarely arrives as a confession. It arrives as confirmation. I noticed it in the days that followed, after we returned to Colorado. Michael became careful in a way he never had before. Not distant, controlled, like someone managing variables. He put his phone face down. He stepped outside to take calls. He started saying "we" when he meant "I," and later when he meant never. I didn't confront him. I observed. That's what 12 years in the Army trains you to do. You don't rush in loud. You gather intelligence. You let patterns reveal themselves. I was back on base within 48 hours. Fort Carson smelled like dust and motor oil and familiarity. My office was small, windowless, stacked with logistics reports and deployment timelines. I liked it that way. Facts didn't lie. My role was precise. I managed supply chain intelligence for forward units. Numbers, routes, vulnerabilities. I was good at it. Not brilliant. Reliable. The kind of officer commanders trusted when failure wasn't an option. I was up for promotion to major in 9 months. That mattered. At home, Michael worked remotely as a consultant. The kind of job no one ever quite explained, but somehow paid well enough. He'd always said my deployments gave him freedom to focus. I used to believe that. The first real crack came 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday night. I came home early from base, unplanned. My last meeting was canceled, and I decided to surprise him. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Michael's laptop was open on the kitchen table. Not his work email. A shared photo album. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. Emily's name was right there. The folder title said, "Weekend Plans." My pulse stayed steady. That's another thing training teaches you. Heart rate control. I closed the laptop and went to the bedroom. Michael was in the shower. His phone buzzed on the dresser once. Then again, I glanced down. The preview lit up the screen. Emily. He still doesn't know, right? I picked up the phone. Not because I panicked, because I needed to know the scale of the threat. The message thread was long, months long. Photos, jokes, complaints about me being gone, about me being rigid, about me choosing the Army over them. One message stopped me cold. Emily. She's not coming home for Thanksgiving anyway. We can finally talk about the house. The house. I scrolled. Michael. Once the promotion hits, she'll be deployed again. We just need to be patient. Patient. That was the moment my marriage officially ended. Not because of sex. Not even because of betrayal. Because they were planning my absence as a resource. Michael stepped out of the bathroom a minute later, towel around his waist, steam trailing behind him. He froze when he saw me holding the phone. "Rachel," he said slowly. "Let me explain." I handed it back to him. "No," I said. "You won't." His shoulders sagged, just slightly. Relief, not guilt. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," he said. "You're never here. Emily understands me." "She's my sister," I replied. He winced. "That doesn't change how I feel." "I'm not asking about feelings," I said. "I'm asking about decisions." He said nothing. That silence told me everything. I slept in the guest room that night. Not because I was hurt, because I needed clarity. The next morning, I called my legal assistant's office on base and requested an appointment. Quietly, professionally. Captain Rachel Donovan does not lose control. The betrayal didn't explode my life. It started hollowing it out. At base, rumors move slower than civilians think, but they move. Michael had attended unit functions. Emily had visited once during a deployment homecoming. People noticed glances, familiarity. I started seeing it in hindsight. I didn't confront my parents, not yet, because the next betrayal didn't come from my husband or my sister. It came from the institution I trusted to protect me. 2 weeks later, my commanding officer called me into his office. Colonel Reed didn't waste time. "Rachel," he said, hands folded. "I received a call." "From whom?" I asked. "Your husband." I didn't react. "He expressed concern about your mental state," Reed continued. "Said you've been under unusual stress." The room went very quiet. "He's worried about your judgment," Reed added carefully. "Given your position, that matters." I stared straight ahead. "Did he provide evidence?" "No," Reed said. "But the call is documented." There it was. Michael wasn't just betraying me privately. He was positioning himself publicly, and he hadn't done it alone. Because at the end of the meeting, Colonel Reed said one more thing. "Your sister also reached out. She said she was concerned about you isolating yourself." My sister, Emily, using my family name, my rank, my marriage. I walked out of that office with my posture perfect and my mind already shifting. This wasn't a domestic problem anymore. It was a threat to my career, and someone had decided I was expendable. I drove home that night knowing one thing with absolute certainty. They weren't just taking things from me. They were rewriting who I was allowed to be. And I was done letting that happen quietly. The day after Colonel Reed's meeting, I did what I'd always done when something threatened my career. I stabilized the perimeter. I requested a formal wellness evaluation through behavioral health, not because I needed it, but because documentation matters more than truth when narratives are already in motion. If someone was going to suggest I was unstable, I would make sure the record said otherwise. The appointment was 3 days later. Captain Lisa Wynn, the evaluating psychologist, was direct. She didn't circle. She didn't soften. "Why are you here?" she asked. "Because someone filed a concern about my judgment," I said. "I wanted assessed professionally." She studied me for a long moment. "Who filed it?" "My spouse." "And my sister." She raised an eyebrow. "That's unusual." "I am aware." We talked for 90 minutes. Deployment stress, marriage strain, family dynamics, my coping mechanisms, my performance metrics. At the end, she closed the folder. "Captain Donovan," she said, "you are not impaired. You are not unfit for duty. You are operating under acute personal betrayal, and you are responding with restraint." She typed as she spoke. "This will go into your record," she added. "In your favor." I thanked her and left. The report reached Colonel Reed's desk within 24 hours. So did something else. Emily called my parents. I didn't know that at the time. I found out later, when my mother's voice cracked through the phone like a fault line. "Rachel," she said, no greeting. "What is going on with you?" I was sitting in my car outside the commissary, engine off, hands steady on the wheel. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Emily says you're accusing her of things, that you're paranoid, that Michael is worried." I closed my eyes. Just once. "Mom," I said, "are you asking me or are you repeating?" She hesitated. "We're concerned." That's not an answer. Silence. My father took the phone. Robert Donovan, retired high school principal, a man who believed calm voices meant moral high ground. "Rachel," he said, "your sister is trying to help you." "By sleeping with my husband?" I asked. The line went dead quiet. My mother gasped. "That's a horrible thing to say." "It's a factual one," I replied. "I have proof." "You're under stress," my father said. "People imagine things." "I don't imagine timestamps," I said. "They didn't ask to see evidence." That was the moment I understood the hierarchy. Emily was believable. I was inconvenient. That night, Michael didn't come home. He texted at 1:14 a.m. "We need to talk." "Not like this." I didn't reply. The next morning, I packed his things. Not dramatically, not destructively. I placed them in boxes and stacked them by the door. When he arrived that afternoon, he stared at them like they were foreign objects. "You're serious," he said. "Yes. You're throwing away 5 years over a misunderstanding?" "No," I said. "I'm refusing to negotiate with liars." He laughed once, short and sharp. "You're choosing your career over your family." "I'm choosing reality," I replied. He picked up a box. "Emily was right. You don't bend." "I break patterns," I said. He left without another word. 2 days later, I received an email from Base Legal. Subject: Preliminary inquiry. Someone had filed a formal complaint alleging I was creating a hostile domestic environment that could compromise my duties. It cited anonymous concerns. I recognized the language. Michael's. Emily's. I forwarded it to my attorney, Major Daniel Cross, assigned through JAG. He called me within the hour. "This is weak," he said, "but it's coordinated." "Yes," I replied. "Are you prepared for escalation?" "I've been preparing my whole career," I said. Meanwhile, Emily posted photos online. Her and Michael at a charity event. Nothing explicit, just close enough to suggest. My mother liked the post. That was the smallest betrayal, and somehow the sharpest. I stopped calling home. At work, I focused harder. Flawless reports, early submissions, no deviations. Colonel Reed called me in again at the end of the week. "I want to be clear," he said. "Your evaluation cleared you. The inquiry is not moving forward without evidence." "Understood." "But," he continued, "your personal life is bleeding into your professional one." I met his gaze. Only because someone else pushed it there. He didn't disagree. As I left his office, I realized something critical. Michael and Emily weren't acting emotionally. They were acting strategically. They weren't trying to win me back. They were trying to neutralize me. And that meant this wasn't about confronting them. It was about outmaneuvering them. Because when betrayal becomes coordinated, the only safe response is controlled exposure. And I was done protecting people who had already decided to sacrifice me. The next move wouldn't be loud. It would be precise. And once I made it, there would be no going back. I stopped reacting. That was the first thing that changed. Not because I was tired, because reaction feeds strategy when the other side is already coordinating. Michael and Emily wanted emotion, confusion, a public fracture they could frame as instability. So I went quiet. At work, I requested a lateral reassignment within my brigade. Temporary. Same rank, same responsibility, different reporting chain. Colonel Reed approved it within 48 hours. Not because he was choosing sides, but because paperwork backed me, and risk followed noise. I had removed the noise. My new office overlooked a motor pool. Concrete, steel, movement. I liked it. Meanwhile, I began documenting everything. Not obsessively, methodically. Dates Michael contacted my command. Dates Emily spoke to my parents before any accusations surfaced. Times my location conflicted with claims made about my behavior. I requested phone records through my attorney. I pulled financial logs from our joint account. I archived social media posts before they disappeared. I didn't confront. I prepared. At home, the silence grew uncomfortable. Michael stopped texting. Emily blocked me on social media. My mother sent one message. "Your father thinks you should apologize so this doesn't get worse." I read it once and set my phone down. The truth doesn't need apologies. It needs timing. The trigger came 2 weeks later. A certified letter arrived at my apartment. Emily had filed for temporary guardianship authority over my grandmother's estate. My grandmother was still alive. Margaret Donovan, 84, early dementia diagnosis, living in assisted care outside Cedar Rapids. Sharp some days, foggy others. She'd named me medical proxy years ago. Quietly. Without telling anyone, Emily was moving to replace me. The letter cited concern over my mental fitness and extended absence due to military obligations. I stared at the page until the words flattened into shapes. This wasn't personal anymore. This was asset control. I called my attorney. "This crosses a line," Major Cross said. "Yes," I replied, "and that's good." He paused. "Explain." "They moved first, legally, and they left a trail." Emily had submitted sworn statements referencing my alleged instability. Statements that matched language Michael had used with my command. Same phrases, same cadence. Coordination. False statements in a guardianship filing are not a mistake. They're perjury. Major Cross exhaled slowly. You realize what happens if we push this? Yes. It will be public. Yes. And it will implicate your family. Yes. He was quiet for a moment. Then we proceed carefully. That night, I drove to Iowa. I didn't tell anyone. At the assisted living center, my grandmother was sitting by the window, knitting something uneven and blue. "Rachel," she said when she saw me. "You look thinner." "I've been busy," I said. She squeezed my hand. Her grip was weaker than I remembered, still deliberate. "They keep asking me questions," she said. "About you." "Who does?" "Your sister. That man you married." I didn't interrupt. "They want me to say you're unwell," she continued. "I told them I raised tougher women than that." I smiled once. "Did you sign anything?" I asked. "No," she said sharply. "I don't sign things I don't understand." Good. The next morning, my attorney filed an objection with the county court. Attached were my medical evaluation, my service record, a sworn statement from my grandmother's physician, and a request for discovery on the statements Emily had submitted. Within hours, Emily called. Her voice was tight, controlled. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "Yes," I replied. "I did." "You're embarrassing the family." "You filed legal documents saying I was unstable," I said. "That's not embarrassment. That's exposure." She went quiet. Michael texted next. "This is spiraling. We can still fix it." I didn't reply, because this wasn't spiraling. It was clarifying. 2 days later, my parents showed up at my apartment, unannounced. My mother cried. My father looked angry, in the way men do when authority slips. "You're tearing us apart," my mother said. "No," I replied. "I'm declining to be torn." My father stepped forward. "Drop the objection. Emily was trying to help." "She committed perjury," I said calmly. "So did Michael." "That's a strong accusation," he snapped. "So is filing guardianship over a living person," I replied. Silence filled the room. Finally, my mother whispered, "What do you want?" I met her eyes. "I want the truth on record." That was the moment their fear became visible. Because truth doesn't negotiate. It documents. And once filed, it can't be unfiled. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. Emily's name would be on the docket. Michael's statements would be examined. And my career, the one they tried to undermine quietly, would be sitting there in black and white. They thought I was isolated. They were wrong. I was positioned. And the next time we spoke, it wouldn't be as sisters or spouses. It would be under oath. The weeks before the hearing moved differently. Time didn't rush. It compressed. Every conversation felt pre-recorded. Every silence carried intent. I stopped expecting honesty and started measuring consistency. That shift alone changed everything. At Fort Carson, my reassignment settled into routine. My new supervisor, Lieutenant Colonel Aaron Mills, was precise and uninterested in drama. "Your work speaks," he told me during our first check-in. That's enough for me. It was the first time in months someone had said something simple and meant it. I poured myself into the job. 12-hour days. Briefings that ended early because there was nothing left to clarify. My name stopped circulating in hallways. The institution moved on. People always do. At night, I reviewed filings. Guardianship law in Iowa. Standards of proof. Prior cases where family members attempted control through manufactured concern. It wasn't my first time preparing for adversarial conditions, but it was the first time the threat wore my sister's face. Emily didn't call again. Instead, her attorney did. Thomas Keller, mid-50s, polished voice, the kind of man who mistook calm for leverage. "Captain Donovan," he said, "we're hoping to resolve this quietly." "There's nothing quiet about sworn statements," I replied. "Families make mistakes under stress. Courts call them false claims." He cleared his throat. "Emily is willing to withdraw the petition if you agree to step aside as proxy." "No," I said. A pause. "You understand that proceeding will expose personal matters." "I'm counting on it," I replied. That ended the call. Michael tried one last time 2 nights later. He showed up at my apartment. I didn't let him in. He stood in the hallway, hands in his pockets, looking smaller than I remembered. "You're really going through with this," he said. "Yes. You don't have to destroy us." "I didn't file anything," I replied. I responded. He laughed, brittle. You always need to win. I need the record to be accurate, I said. That's different. He leaned closer. Emily thinks you're doing this out of spite. I'm doing it out of pattern recognition, I replied. That was the last conversation we ever had. 3 days before the hearing, my grandmother's physician, Dr. Helen Moore, sent an updated evaluation. Margaret Donovan was cognitively impaired, but capable of expressing consistent preference regarding her care. She preferred me. That preference mattered. My parents drove out the night before the hearing. They asked to meet. I chose a public place, a diner off the interstate. My mother cried before she sat down. This is too much, she said. Why won't you just let Emily handle it? She's here. You're gone. I'm not gone, I said. I'm serving. That's the problem, my father said. You're always choosing that over us. I sipped my coffee. No, I chose it. You chose something else. My mother shook her head. You're punishing us. I'm establishing limits, I replied. You feel punished because you benefited from the lack of them. They didn't respond. Outside, the parking lot was half empty. A semi idled near the fuel pumps. This isn't revenge, my father said finally. No, I agreed. It's consequence. The hearing took place in a county courtroom with faded wood benches and a judge who did not tolerate theatrics. Judge Eleanor Price listened more than she spoke. Emily sat across the aisle from me. She wore gray, conservative, appropriate. Her posture was perfect. Her eyes never met mine. Michael sat behind her. Not family, not counsel, witness. Emily's attorney opened with concern. Family closeness, military absence, stress. Then my attorney stood. Major Cross didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue emotion. He introduced timelines. Dates when Emily contacted my command. Dates when Michael filed concerns. Dates when Emily filed guardianship. Identical phrasing across documents. He submitted my medical clearance. He submitted my service record. He submitted Dr. Moore's report. Finally, he submitted phone records showing coordination between Emily and Michael in the days before each filing. Judge Price looked up. Ms. Donovan, she said to Emily, did you draft your statement independently? Yes, Emily said. Did anyone assist you? No. Judge Price slid the phone records forward. These records indicate prolonged communication between you and Mr. Grant immediately prior to filing, including discussion of strategy. Emily's jaw tightened. I don't see how that's relevant, her attorney said. Judge Price didn't look at him. It's relevant if sworn statements are coordinated to misrepresent. The room went very quiet. Emily spoke again. I was trying to protect my grandmother. Judge Price nodded once. Intent does not excuse falsehood. She turned to me. Captain Donovan, she said, do you wish to retain proxy authority? Yes, I replied. And do you wish to pursue sanctions for false statements? I paused. Every eye in the room waited. This was the moment people imagine revenge lives. I shook my head. No. Judge Price raised an eyebrow. I want the petition dismissed, I continued. And I want the record corrected. Judge Price smiled faintly. Request granted, she said. Petition dismissed with prejudice. Statements corrected. She looked at Emily. Any further action regarding this estate will require court approval. Gavel down. Done. Outside the courthouse, my parents stood frozen. Michael wouldn't meet my eyes. Emily looked stunned, like someone who had expected applause and received silence instead. My grandmother squeezed my hand. You did fine, she said. That night, alone in my hotel room, I sat on the edge of the bed and let the stillness settle. If you're still listening, still here, take a second. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. Not for me. For the people who are learning that quiet strength doesn't mean staying silent forever. Because sometimes, the most controlled form of revenge is letting the truth speak once, clearly, and then walking away while it echoes. This wasn't the end, but it was the turn, and everything after this would move in one direction only, forward. After the hearing, the noise didn't stop. It changed pitch. Emily didn't call. She didn't text. She didn't post. Silence from her was not peace. It was regrouping. Michael moved out of state within a week. He sent one email through his attorney asking to discuss property division. Neutral language, no emotion, like he was closing a file. I agreed to mediation, not because I wanted closure, because I wanted documentation. Back at Fort Carson, my reassignment became permanent. Lieutenant Colonel Mills called me into his office on a Wednesday afternoon. "I reviewed your last 3 months of output," he said, sliding a folder across the desk. "It's consistent under pressure." "Yes, sir. There's a slot opening in operational planning," he continued. "Higher visibility, higher scrutiny." "I'm available," I said. He studied me. "You aware that visibility cuts both ways?" "Yes." "Good," he said. "I'll recommend you." That recommendation mattered more than sympathy ever could. At night, I trained harder. Not to punish my body, to anchor it. 5-mile runs, weight circuits, repetition, control. My grandmother called every Sunday. "They stopped visiting," she said one evening, voice steady. "Your sister hasn't been back." "I'm sorry," I replied. She laughed softly. "I'm not. It's quieter." She told me she'd updated her will, independently, with a different attorney. "I want clarity," she said, "before people get ideas." I didn't ask details. Clarity was her word now, too. The mediation with Michael took place in a bland office park outside Colorado Springs. Beige walls, neutral art, 2 attorneys. A mediator named Sandra Feldman, who spoke in careful sentences. Michael didn't look at me when he arrived. We went through assets line by line. The apartment, the savings, his consulting income, my military pay. No theatrics. Then Sandra said, "There's an allegation raised by Mr. Grant regarding spousal abandonment due to deployment." I lifted my eyes. "Deployment is not abandonment," my attorney said calmly. Sandra nodded. "Correct, but it can affect support considerations." Michael finally spoke. "I carried the relationship alone." I looked at him. "You coordinated legal action to remove me from my grandmother's care while I was serving. That's not carrying anything." Silence. Sandra glanced between us. "Is that documented?" "Yes," my attorney replied, sliding copies forward. Michael's lawyer shifted. We finished in under 2 hours. I walked out with a fair settlement and something else. Leverage. Because 2 days later, Emily called. Her voice sounded different, tighter. "You didn't have to drag Michael into this," she said. "You did that," I replied. "You're enjoying this." "No," I said. "I'm concluding it." She exhaled sharply. "Mom is falling apart." "Mom watched," I replied. "So did you." "You're heartless." "That's convenient," I said. "It saves you from accountability." She paused. "What do you want?" The question everyone asks when they realize control has shifted. "I want distance," I said. "And I want you to stop representing me to anyone, professionally or personally." "You can't control that." "I can respond to it," I replied. "Legally." That did it. She hung up. A week later, a rumor reached my command. Anonymous concern. Again. This time, about my suitability for advancement. The timing was obvious, but the content was sloppy. Too vague, too emotional. No corroboration. Lieutenant Colonel Mills called me in. "I wanted you to hear it from me," he said. "This won't go anywhere." "Thank you," I said. "Someone's pushing," he added. "They're not good at it." "I know," I said. He leaned back. "You want to file a formal harassment complaint?" I thought about it. "No," I said. "Not yet." He nodded. "Your call." That night, I opened a new folder. I labeled it simply Chronology. I didn't add commentary. I added facts, calls, filings, timing, witnesses. I wasn't building a case out of anger. I was building a record for inevitability. My parents sent a letter, handwritten, 4 pages. They talked about family unity, forgiveness, how hard this had been on them. They didn't mention perjury, or guardianship, or Michael. I didn't respond. Weeks passed. Then months. Emily's real estate firm announced a partnership. Public. Celebrated. She posted photos again. Michael appeared in one. Background. Casual. Familiar. That was the confirmation I needed, because it meant they hadn't learned. They thought exposure was over. They thought silence meant safety. At work, I was selected for the planning role. At home, my life simplified. And somewhere between the two, something settled. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger requires proximity. I had distance and clarity and a file that grew heavier by the week. They had made one mistake too many. Not because it hurt me, but because it showed pattern. And patterns, once documented, don't disappear. They wait. And so did I. The turning point didn't announce itself. It arrived disguised as routine. A calendar invite popped up on my work system for the following Tuesday. Mandatory ethics refresher. Battalion-wide. 90 minutes. I almost deleted it out of habit. Then I noticed the facilitator. Office of the Inspector General. That changed the texture of the week. I didn't assume it was about me. I never assume. Assumptions are how people misstep. But I reviewed my chronology folder that night anyway. Updated it, checked timestamps, confirmed backups. At the session, the room was full of officers and senior NCOs shifting in their seats, half listening. The presenter, Major Evelyn Brooks, didn't waste time on slides. Ethics violations aren't always dramatic, she said. They're often familiar. Family, money, influence. I sat still. Halfway through, she said something that landed too cleanly to be coincidence. If you believe someone is attempting to leverage personal relationships to influence command decisions, report it. Delay is how damage compounds. Afterward, she stayed behind. Captain Donovan, she said, approaching me without urgency. Do you have a moment? We walked to a quieter hallway. I'm not here to investigate you, she said, but your name has crossed my desk. I nodded once. In what context? Third-party communications, intended to influence your advancement, she replied. Patterned. Documented. I didn't ask who. Have you kept records? She asked. Yes. She met my eyes. Good. If this escalates, you'll be asked. That was all. No drama. No warning. Just a door cracked open. 2 days later, my grandmother called. They want to sell the lake house, she said. The lake house had been in the family since before I was born. Modest, wooden, quiet. She and my grandfather had spent summers there. It was supposed to pass to all of us equally. Who is they? I asked. Your parents, she said. Emily brought a buyer. Did you agree? No, she said. I said no. I closed my eyes. They told me it would simplify things, she continued. That you wouldn't want it anyway. You're never around. There it was again. My absence. Repurposed. When did this come up? I asked. Last weekend. Did they present paperwork? Yes. Did you sign? No. Good. I called my attorney as soon as we hung up. They're testing boundaries, he said. Again. Yes, I replied. And overreaching. Do you want to file a protective order regarding estate decisions? Yes. We filed that afternoon. It took 3 days for Emily to call. Her voice was sharp now. No softness left. You're blocking everything, she said. The house, the trust, Michael. I'm protecting my grandmother, I replied. You're freezing us out. I'm freezing misconduct, I said. There's a difference. She laughed. You think you're untouchable because you wear a uniform. I think sworn statements matter, I said. She lowered her voice. You don't know what you're doing. I do, I replied. And so do you. She hung up. The following week, my parents came to Colorado. They didn't tell me. They told Michael. I found out because my building's front desk called to say someone had been asking about my schedule. That crossed another line. I called my father. Why are you here? I asked. We need to talk, he said. In person. No, I replied. You don't. You can't keep hiding behind paperwork, he snapped. I'm not hiding, I said. I'm standing where the record can see me. He scoffed. You're tearing this family apart. I paused. No, I said. You're reacting to accountability. That night, I submitted a formal statement to the Inspector General. Not an accusation. A timeline. Names. Dates. Copies. I didn't ask for punishment. I asked for a review. The response came faster than I expected. An acknowledgement. A case number. And instructions not to discuss the matter externally. I complied. Silence followed. Not the brittle silence from before. The kind that means someone else is reading. Emily stopped posting online. Michael's name vanished from her circle. My parents stopped calling. At work, nothing changed outwardly. Inside, I felt something shift. The constant readiness eased. Not because the threat was gone. Because it had been transferred. I wasn't carrying it alone anymore. One afternoon, Lieutenant Colonel Mills stopped by my office. You doing all right? He asked. Yes, I said. He nodded. Good. Keep doing what you're doing. That was all the reassurance I needed. Weeks later, I received a letter from the county court. Emily's name was on it. So was mine. The subject line was neutral. Notice of review. I sat at my desk, the letter open, and felt no surge of emotion, just alignment. Everything was where it belonged now. They had tried to erase me, quietly. They had mistaken restraint for weakness. And now the system was doing what systems do best when given fact. Processing. The review date was set for the end of the month. I closed the letter and placed it in the chronology folder. Then I locked the drawer. I didn't need to add anything else. The next move wasn't mine. And that was exactly how I wanted it. Waiting is a discipline. I learned that early in the Army. You don't rush intelligence. You let it mature. You don't force outcomes. You shape conditions and let gravity work. The review date sat on my calendar like a quiet marker. End of the month, county courthouse. Civil review tied to the estate filings and ancillary communications. Emily hadn't expected that. None of them had. Because they'd mistaken the absence of confrontation for surrender. In the weeks leading up to it, I lived normally. Work, training, sleep. No visible disruption. No late-night calls, no frantic emails. At Fort Carson, my planning role expanded. I was briefed into a joint exercise with allied units. Long hours, high stakes. The kind of work that reminds you why you chose service in the first place. One evening, as I was leaving the building, Major Evelyn Brooks, from the Inspector General's office, caught up to me. "Case is active," she said quietly, as if we were discussing the weather. "You won't be asked to speak yet." "Understood. Others will," she added. I nodded. That was enough. Back in Iowa, the estate review triggered a series of letters. My parents received one first, then Emily, then Michael. Requests for clarification. Requests for supporting documentation. Requests that assumed good faith and demanded proof. They had none. My grandmother called me the night Emily received hers. "She came by," she said. "How was she?" I asked. "Polite," my grandmother replied. Too polite. What did she want? She wanted me to say I'd misunderstood her intentions. And? I told her intentions don't matter as much as actions, she said. You taught me that. I smiled. Just once. 2 days later, Emily texted me for the first time in months. "We need to talk. This is getting out of hand." I stared at the screen for a full minute before replying, "You can speak through counsel." Her response came instantly. "You're really going to do this to me?" I didn't reply, because this wasn't something I was doing. This was something she had initiated and could no longer control. At work, a rumor reached me through a channel I trusted. Michael had attempted to contact a senior officer in my previous chain of command again, this time under the guise of concern for operational integrity. It backfired. The officer documented the contact and forwarded it. Pattern. That mattered. The review hearing itself was brief. No speeches, no testimony, just documents and questions. Emily's attorney tried to reframe. Familial concern, miscommunication, stress. The magistrate, Clerk Judge Ronald Haskins, listened without expression. Then he asked one question. "Why did you pursue guardianship authority without medical recommendation?" Emily hesitated. "Just a second. Because I believed it was necessary." "And why did you file statements questioning Captain Donovan's mental fitness, concurrently with communications to her employer?" Emily's attorney objected. The objection was overruled. Emily's voice tightened. "I was worried." Judge Haskins nodded. "Concern without evidence is opinion. Opinion under oath is not protected." The review concluded with a written order issued the same afternoon. Emily was barred from initiating further estate actions without court approval. Michael's statements were flagged for review under false reporting statutes. My proxy status was reaffirmed. No penalties, no drama, just limits. Outside the courthouse, my parents waited. My mother looked tired, smaller. My father looked angry, in the way people do when they realize authority doesn't transfer automatically. "This didn't have to happen," my mother said. "Yes," I replied. "It did." "You could have handled this privately," my father snapped. "I tried," I said. "You didn't listen." Emily stood a few feet away, arms crossed, eyes burning. "You think you've won," she said. I looked at her. Really looked. "This isn't a competition," I said. "It's a boundary." She scoffed. "You always need control." "No," I replied. "I need distance from manipulation." She stepped closer. "You're alone now. You realize that, right?" I met her gaze. "I've been alone for years," I said. The difference is, I'm not pretending otherwise anymore. I walked away without waiting for a response. Back in Colorado, the Inspector General inquiry reached its next phase. Major Brooks called me in. "Your involvement is complete," she said. "We'll handle the rest." "Understood." She studied me. "You did this correctly." That mattered more than vindication. At home, my apartment felt quieter, cleaner. Not because people were gone, because expectation was gone. I stopped checking my phone for reactions. I stopped bracing. The work spoke for me now. The record spoke for me. One night, as I was packing for another exercise, I found an old photo at the bottom of a drawer. Me and Emily as kids. Before competition hardened into habit, I stared at it for a moment. Then I put it back. Not everything needs to be preserved to be honored. Some things are meant to end cleanly. The last message I received that month came from my mother. "I don't understand you anymore." I typed back one sentence. "You don't have to." And for the first time since this began, that was true. The system had done its work. The family dynamics had shifted permanently, and I felt something I hadn't felt since before the first betrayal. Stability. Not because everything was resolved, but because nothing unresolved had power over me anymore. The next chapter of my life wasn't about retaliation. It was about recalibration. And the people who had mistaken my silence for weakness were finally learning the cost of underestimating restraint. The fallout didn't arrive as chaos. It arrived as adjustments. Emily's real estate firm announced a mutual separation with her 2 weeks after the review order. The press release was brief and polite. No reasons given. Just a thank you and a future-focused paragraph. I saw it because someone forwarded it to me with a single line. "Thought you'd want to know." I closed the message and went back to work. At Fort Carson, the joint exercise went live. Long days, early mornings. I lived on coffee and checklists. The kind of work where mistakes are unforgiving and competence speaks without commentary. That was where I belonged. Halfway through the exercise, Lieutenant Colonel Mills called me into a conference room. No preamble. "Inspector General completed preliminary findings," he said. "No action required from you." "Understood." "They found inappropriate third-party attempts to influence command decisions," he continued. "Those attempts are now documented." I nodded. "Promotion board will see a clean file," he said. "Cleaner than most." That was the closest thing to reassurance the Army ever gives. I left the room steady. That night, in my hotel room near the training site, my phone buzzed. "Michael." The message was long, apologetic in tone, careful with words. He wrote about stress, about being pulled between loyalties, about regret. He didn't deny anything. He just reframed it. I didn't reply. Because apologies that arrive after consequences are just explanations in disguise. 2 days later, my mother called. I considered letting it go to voicemail. I answered. "We need to talk," she said. "I'm in the field," I replied. "This is important." "So is my job," I said. "You taught me that." Silence. "Your sister is struggling," she said finally. "I'm aware," I replied. "She's being treated unfairly." I closed my eyes. "Just once." "She filed false statements under oath," I said. "That's not unfairness. That's outcome." "You've always been so rigid," my mother said. "No room for grace." "There was room," I replied. "You filled it with denial." She started to cry. I let her. When she stopped, I said, "If you want a relationship with me, it has to exist outside Emily's narrative." She didn't answer. "That's the boundary," I added. We hung up without resolution. Back in Colorado, the mediation paperwork with Michael finalized. Clean split. No appeals. No follow-ups. I changed my emergency contact. That mattered more than any settlement. Emily tried once more. A letter, handwritten. No lawyer. She wrote about childhood, about resentment, about feeling second best. She didn't mention the guardianship, or the calls to my command, or the strategy messages. She asked to meet. I didn't respond. Some conversations are just attempts to renegotiate consequences. At work, my name appeared on the preliminary promotion list. Not confirmed, but positioned. People congratulated me quietly. No one mentioned the past months. That's how institutions move forward. They don't process feelings. They process outcomes. One evening, alone in my apartment, I poured a glass of water and sat on the floor with my back against the couch. No TV, no phone. I thought about the version of myself who used to smooth things over, who believed endurance was loyalty. That version had kept the peace by shrinking. She had done her best, but she wasn't needed anymore. If you're listening to this and feeling something tighten in your chest, take a second. Like the story, subscribe, leave a comment. Not because I need affirmation, because someone else is hearing this and realizing they're not crazy for noticing patterns. That matters. The final consequence arrived quietly. Emily was named in a civil notice related to misrepresentation in a separate transaction. Not mine, someone else's. Patterns don't stay contained. My parents stopped calling, not out of spite, out of recalibration. They didn't know how to speak to me without leverage, and without it, they had nothing prepared. That was their work to do. Mine was finished. I stood on my balcony one evening, watching the sun drop behind the mountains. The air was thin and clean. The city below moved without me. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the next blow. I wasn't bracing. I wasn't rehearsing explanations. The truth was already where it belonged. On paper. In files. In systems that don't forget. And I was free to move forward, without dragging the weight of other people's intentions behind me. The final chapter wouldn't be about them. It would be about what happens when you stop proving your worth to people who only value control and choose yourself instead. The promotion list became official on a Monday morning. I opened the email in my office with the door closed and the blinds half drawn. Not because I was hiding, but because I wanted the moment to land without witnesses. Selected. Major. Effective in 6 months. No annotations. No conditions. Clean. I sat there for a full minute after reading it, hands resting on the desk, breathing steady. There was no rush of triumph, no urge to call anyone, just confirmation. Later that day, Lieutenant Colonel Mills stopped by. "Congratulations," he said. "You earned it." "Thank you, sir. You kept your head when others tried to move it for you," he added. "That matters." It did. At home, I cooked dinner for one. Simple. Protein, vegetables, routine. I ate standing at the counter, window open, the sound of traffic distant and unimportant. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring. Then, a text. "This is Emily. Please, just hear me out." I stared at it. Then I blocked the number. Not out of anger. Out of completion. The next day, my grandmother called. "They told me you were promoted," she said. "I'm proud of you." "Thank you," I replied. "They're upset," she added. "Your parents." "I know." She paused. "Do you miss them?" I considered the question. "I miss who I thought they were," I said. She nodded. "That's honest." She told me she'd finalized her estate documents. Everything clear, everything documented. "I want peace," she said. "So do I replied. A week later, I attended a formal dinner on base. Not family, not obligation, just colleagues. People who understood boundaries. I wore my uniform. It fit differently now. Not physically, mentally. A junior officer asked me for advice. "How do you keep people from getting inside your head?" she asked. I answered without thinking. "You stop explaining yourself to people who benefit from misunderstanding you." She wrote it down. That night, I dreamed without interruption. No sudden waking, no rehearsed conversations, just sleep. My parents sent a package, no return address. Inside was a framed photo. Me in uniform. Graduation day. Years ago. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, 3 words. "We try." I stared at it for a long time. Then I placed it in a drawer. Not discarded. Contained. That was the difference now. Containment instead of confrontation. At work, my responsibilities expanded. Planning briefings, mentorship, decisions with ripple effects. I handled them without apology. The institution recognized me because I met its standards, not because I asked for understanding. One evening, walking back to my apartment, I realized something simple and irreversible. I wasn't angry anymore, not because I'd forgiven, because forgiveness wasn't required. Closure had come in the form of autonomy. I had my name, my rank, my record. They had their narratives. And narratives collapse when they can't influence outcomes. If you're still listening, still here, you know what this part feels like. The quiet after everything that needed to fall has fallen. The absence of noise where pressure used to live. The understanding that revenge isn't loud. It's durable. And it looks like a life that moves forward without asking who's watching. The final chapter isn't about punishment. It's about what remains when you stop carrying what was never yours to begin with. And what remains, in my case, was strength, clean, unshared, and finally, fully my own. The weeks after the promotion announcement settled into a rhythm I hadn't known before. Not the frantic kind, not the defensive kind, the sustainable one. I moved into a new office with a window. Nothing dramatic, just enough light to remind me there was a world outside briefings and timelines. I updated my nameplate. Major Rachel Donovan. It looked ordinary once it was real. At home, I downsized. Not out of loss, but intention. I donated furniture that had belonged to the version of my life that required negotiation. I kept what worked. I let the rest go without ceremony. Michael's attorney sent a final notice confirming the dissolution was complete. No loose ends. No pending issues. I signed, scanned, returned it. That chapter closed without a sound. Emily didn't try again. That, more than anything, told me the lesson had landed. My parents remained quiet. Weeks passed, then a month, then 2. Silence stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like accuracy. They didn't know how to relate to me without leverage, and until they learned, distance was the only honest position. At work, I was assigned to mentor 2 junior officers. One of them, Second Lieutenant Marisol Vega, reminded me of myself, not in background, in restraint. She listened more than she spoke, took notes, asked precise questions. One afternoon, she hesitated at my door. "Ma'am," she said, "can I ask you something off the record?" I nodded. "How do you know when to stop trying to fix people?" I didn't answer immediately. "Fixing assumes consent," I said finally. "When there isn't any, all you're doing is delaying your own clarity." She nodded. That mattered. My grandmother's health declined gently, predictably. I visited when I could. She liked sitting outside, even when the air was cold. "You're lighter," she said once. "I am," I replied. She smiled. "Good. You were carrying too many people." She passed 2 months later. Peacefully. No drama, no last-minute changes. Everything had already been decided. The service was small, controlled. Emily didn't attend. My parents did, but they sat separately. No confrontation, no speeches beyond the expected. "After you did right by her," he said. "Yes," I replied. He waited, like there might be more. There wasn't. I left early. Back in Colorado, the days stretched forward without resistance. Work filled the hours. Training filled the margins. I slept well. One evening, as I was organizing files, I found the chronology folder. Thick. Complete. I opened it once more. Read nothing. Then I archived it. Not deleted. Archived. Because history doesn't disappear. It just stops being active. That night, I cooked a meal and ate it slowly. I watched the city lights come on. I felt no urge to check my phone. That's when I knew the shift was permanent. The absence of anticipation, no waiting for apology, no bracing for escalation, just presence. I thought about how many years I'd confused loyalty with endurance, how many times I'd stayed because leaving felt like failure. I understood now that staying when truth is denied isn't loyalty, it's surrender. And leaving isn't loss when it preserves your integrity. It's alignment. The army didn't save me. The courts didn't save me. Documentation didn't save me. I did, by stopping the performance, by refusing to negotiate reality, by letting systems do their work instead of trying to manage outcomes emotionally. That was the real revenge. Not watching them fall, but realizing I no longer needed to watch at all. The final step wasn't public. It was internal. Letting go of the belief that being understood was required for peace. It isn't. Clarity is. And I had that now. Clean. Uncontested. Mine. My promotion ceremony took place on a clear morning in late spring. No speeches about sacrifice. No family row reserved in the front. Just a formation, a flag, and a set of hands pinning new rank to my uniform with practiced efficiency. When it was done, people shook my hand and moved on. The Army doesn't linger on moments. It absorbs them and keeps going. I liked that. That afternoon, I drove west, without a destination. Windows down, mountains stretching open in front of me. I stopped when I felt like stopping, ate when I was hungry, thought when I wanted to. Freedom doesn't announce itself. It shows up as absence. No one calling to negotiate my choices. No one rewriting my silence into guilt. No one standing behind me, waiting to see what they could take next. My parents didn't attend the ceremony. I knew they wouldn't. They sent a short text instead. "Congratulations. We hope you're well." I replied with 2 words. "Thank you. Nothing more, nothing less." That was the relationship now. Polite, accurate, limited. Emily never reached out again. I heard through someone else that she'd moved states. New job, new circle, new story. That was fine. People who build their lives on control always believe geography will fix what accountability exposed. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it just postpones the next collapse. Either way, it was no longer my concern. At work, I stepped fully into my role. Major meant more than rank. It meant visibility, authority, responsibility that couldn't be handed off when it got uncomfortable. I made decisions without apologizing for them. I set boundaries without justifying them. I corrected misinformation calmly and once. No repetition. Junior officers noticed. Senior officers adjusted. Systems respond to clarity. One evening, after a long day, I sat on my balcony and watched the lights come on across the city. I thought about the version of myself who used to rehearse conversations before making phone calls, who believed being understood was the same as being safe. She had survived by staying quiet. I survived by stopping. That difference mattered. Revenge had never been the point. Not really. I didn't need to see my husband humiliated or my sister exposed to feel whole again. Those things happened because patterns don't hide forever, not because I chased them. The real shift came when I stopped protecting people from the consequences of their own choices, when I let the truth stand on its own feet, when I walked away without dragging their version of events behind me. That's what turned the tables. Not anger, not confrontation, but refusal. Refusal to participate in narratives that required my silence to function. Refusal to carry guilt that wasn't earned. Refusal to keep explaining why I deserved the space I occupied. I didn't lose a family. I outgrew a system that depended on me being smaller, and I didn't win. I stabilized. That's the part people don't talk about enough. Healing isn't dramatic. It doesn't look like triumph. It looks like waking up without tension in your chest. It looks like decisions made without fear of backlash. It looks like choosing your own life and realizing no one gets to vote on it anymore. If you've stayed with this story until now, take a moment. Like it, subscribe, leave a comment. Not because I need validation, but because someone else is listening to this while standing in a place where they're being quietly undermined, told to stay calm, told to wait, told not to make trouble. And they need to hear this part. You don't need permission to protect yourself. You don't need consensus to set a boundary. And you don't need to destroy anyone to reclaim your dignity. Sometimes the most controlled form of revenge is simply becoming unreachable to manipulation, living well, living clearly, living without explaining yourself to people who never planned to understand you anyway. That's where my story ends, and where my life, finally unencumbered, begins.